Okay, so get ready for a deep dive into a world of incredible wealth, like really tangled family ties and a fight for freedom that's made headlines, around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going to be looking at the case of Princess Latifa,
Right.
daughter of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai.
Yeah.
You might know him from the Godolphin racing
Uh,
stable,
mm.
or maybe just like those jaw-dropping pictures of Dubai's skyline.
Yeah, absolutely.
But behind all that glitz and glamour, there's a story of power and control,
Oh, for sure.
and a young woman who says she's being
It's
silenced.
a really captivating story, especially when you think about the contrast between that image of Dubai that we all see of this modern progressive state,
Right.
and then you have these allegations of human rights abuses happening within the ruling family itself.
Yeah.
It's like a stark reminder that power can still operate in the shadows, even today.
Yeah, for sure. It's like something out of a movie, but with real-world consequences.
Right.
So to untangle this whole web of intrigue, we've got a stack of sources for you today.
Absolutely. Articles from the BBC, The Guardian,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll also be looking at some insights from the Pegasus project, which tracks the use of spyware technology.
Oh, wow.
So we'll be diving into Latifa's claims that she's living in a super restrictive and abusive environment,
Right.
her daring escape attempts,
Yeah.
and the really murky international response.
Yeah, I think what we're really trying to do here is separate fact from fiction because there are some really conflicting accounts.
Yeah.
So we're going to be examining all the evidence, weighing the different perspectives, and
Right.
trying to figure out what's really happening.
Mhm.
Like, is this a case of a troubled young woman who's maybe misunderstanding her family's intentions, or is there something much darker going on?
Right. Yeah. So let's start with the escape attempts themselves because they're worthy of a Hollywood thriller.
Absolutely.
Latifa first tried to flee Dubai back in 2002 when she was only 16,
Wow.
but she was caught and brought back.
Then in 2018, she planned this really meticulous escape with the help of a former French spy named Hervé Jobert
Oh, wow.
and her friend Tina Johinen,
Okay.
who she'd met through fitness training.
I think it's really important to note that before that 2018 attempt, she actually released this video
Good.
detailing her alleged reasons for wanting to leave Dubai.
Oh, wow.
And she claimed that she was subjected to very severe restrictions and abuse,
Wow.
which was in total contrast to that public image projected by the royal family.
Yeah.
And this video, even years later, remains a key piece of evidence to really understand her motivations and how serious these claims actually are.
Okay, so the 2018 escape attempt involved burner phones. They disabled tracking devices.
Mm-hmm.
They even had plans to seek asylum in the U.S.
Oh.
They thought they were being so careful, but things took this really dark turn.
Oh, no.
Remember the Pegasus project we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, data leaks suggest that the UAE may have been using that Pegasus spyware to monitor Latifa
Oh, wow.
and anyone close to her during the escape.
That's scary.
Phone numbers that belonged to her friends, even a skydiving instructor she knew,
Mm-hmm.
were found on this leaked list linked to potential Pegasus targets.
Wow.
So this raises some really serious questions about how much surveillance she was under.
Right.
And it's potentially even beyond Dubai's borders.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how far this really goes.
Right. Like imagine thinking you're carefully covering your tracks, but someone's watching your every move.
Yeah, that's super unsettling.
So Latifa and Tina, they met for breakfast in Dubai,
Okay.
switched cars,
Mhm.
and drove 6 hours to Oman.
Okay.
Then they met Jalbert
Right.
there
Yeah.
and boarded this yacht called the Nostromo,
Okay.
which was heading for India.
Hmm.
Latifa was planning to fly to the U.S. from India.
Got it.
It was a daring plan, like it involved multiple countries
Yeah,
and a high degree of risk,
for sure.
but it all came crashing down after a week at sea.
Oh, no. What happened?
Indian commandos stormed the yacht off the coast of Goa,
Yep.
and they detained everyone on board. This happened at the direct request of the Indian Prime Minister,
Wow.
who was acting on behalf of Dubai.
The Indian government was directly involved in apprehending her.
Yeah.
That adds a whole other layer of complexity to this situation.
Yeah, for sure.
It suggests that there's some level of cooperation between states and raises questions about due process international law and like the influence of these powerful nations.
Right, because this wasn't just like a family matter anymore. It became an international incident.
Yeah.
Latifa was forcibly returned to Dubai.
Yeah.
And she hasn't been seen freely in public since.
Oh.
Her friend Tina, who helped with the escape, was detained for a while and then released.
Okay.
But she's been very vocal about what she witnessed,
Oh, really?
saying that Latifa was screaming and begging not to be taken back to Dubai.
It's so crucial to hear Tina's testimony because she was an eyewitness to all of this.
Right.
You know, it provides independent corroboration of Latifa's claims and really challenges that narrative that's put forward by Dubai. You know, that Latifa was just a troubled young woman who needed to be brought home.
Right. And this is where things get even murkier after being returned to Dubai. Latifa essentially vanished from public view.
Right.
Then about a year later, in February 2021, the BBC obtained these secret video messages
Oh, wow.
that Latifa had recorded while she was under house arrest.
These videos were a total bombshell.
Yeah.
Latifa claimed that she was being held hostage in a villa that had been converted into a jail.
Wow.
It directly contradicted Dubai's assurances that she was safe and well within her family.
Right. And in these videos, Latifa described feeling hopeless and trapped.
Oh, wow.
She even expressed fears for her own safety.
Right.
It was this chilling account that really sent shockwaves around the world.
Yeah, this definitely raised the stakes.
Yeah.
It was no longer just about a young woman wanting freedom.
Right.
It became a case of potential human rights violations, with this powerful state seemingly silencing dissent within their own ruling family.
Right, because Dubai and the UAE initially maintained that Latifa was safe.
Yeah.
And receiving care within the family. They even arranged for Mary Robinson,
Oh, wow.
the former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, to meet with Latifa.
Okay.
But Robinson later admitted that she felt horribly tricked by the family,
Oh, and
who had presented this very carefully curated and controlled image of the whole situation.
Robinson's admission was definitely a turning point.
Wow.
It cast doubt on Dubai's claims, and it highlighted the lengths to which they were willing to go to control the narrative.
Right. And the UK Foreign Ministry also said they were closely monitoring the situation, but remained tight-lipped about any actions they were taking.
Right.
It's that lack of transparency that just fuels speculation and suspicion about Latifa's true condition.
It's interesting that the UK government's involved, especially considering the close ties between the UK and the UAE.
Yeah.
It kind of suggests that behind the scenes there might be these diplomatic efforts underway.
Right.
But the public's really left in the dark about what's actually going on and how effective it all is.
Right. And then adding to the mystery, in May 2021, a photo appeared on Instagram showing Latifa in a Dubai shopping mall with two friends.
Oh, wow.
Then in June 2021, another picture surfaced,
Yeah.
seemingly showing her at Madrid's airport.
It's like every time we think we're getting closer to understanding what's happening,
Yeah.
another piece of the puzzle emerges that makes things even more confusing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Free Latifa campaign, which had been advocating for her release, surprisingly disbanded,
Really?
citing that Latifa was happy and well,
Wow.
based on claims from a cousin.
That's interesting.
But this decision sparked a lot of debate.
Yeah, I bet.
Some believe it's a sign that Latifa is genuinely doing well, while others see it as a way to just silence the international pressure on Dubai.
The disbanding of that campaign,
Yeah.
especially considering the lack of independent verification about how she's actually doing,
Right.
really highlights how ambiguous this whole situation is.
Yeah.
We're left with this sense of unease and wondering if the truth is being hidden beneath all these carefully staged appearances and controlled narratives.
Yeah, so we have a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Latifa's claims, the escape attempts, the alleged spyware, the carefully orchestrated public appearances, and then this campaign for her release subtly disbanding.
Right.
It's hard to know what to believe.
Yeah. And that's what makes this case so compelling.
Right.
It forces us to question all the narratives that are being presented to us, to consider the motivations of everyone involved, and to really grapple with the complex realities of power control and individual freedom in a world where appearances can be totally deceiving.
Okay, so we've laid out this tangled timeline, but let's get to the heart of it. What are the different perspectives on what's happening with Princess Latifa?
Yeah, we're dealing with so many layers here.
Right.
Each one adds to the complexity. You know, we have Latifa's personal account. We have this carefully crafted narrative from Dubai and the UAE.
Right.
And then there's the international response, which is kind of all over the place.
Right, so let's start with Latifa's story. I mean, she's been so brave in speaking out,
Absolutely.
both in that video she made in 2018 before the escape attempt,
Right.
and in those secret messages that she managed to send while she was under house arrest.
Yeah.
She paints a really disturbing picture of her life,
Right.
claiming that she was denied these basic freedoms and even subjected to abuse.
The level of detail that she gives is what makes her testimony so compelling.
Right.
You know, she describes feeling like a prisoner in her own home,
Yeah.
constantly being monitored. And unable to make even like simple decisions about her own life.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine living under that kind of scrutiny?
Yeah.
Knowing that every single move you make is being watched.
Yeah. And the lengths that she was willing to go to escape, not just once, but twice.
Right.
Knowing the risks involved really shows how desperate she must have been.
Yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that a UK court actually ruled in favor of Princess Haya,
Oh, wow.
Sheikh Mohammed's sixth wife, in a custody battle. And that same court found that Sheikh Mohammed orchestrated the return of both Latifa and her sister, Princess Shamsa, who had also tried to escape back in 2000.
That court ruling is huge.
Yeah.
It really adds credibility to Latifa's claims.
Yeah.
You know, it's validation from a legal authority.
Yeah.
It suggests that these weren't just the words of a disgruntled daughter,
Right.
but they were recognized by a court of law.
On the flip side, we have this official narrative from Dubai and the UAE
Right?
insisting that Latifa is safe and well and receiving care within her family.
Yeah.
They've dismissed her claims as misunderstandings or exaggerations, suggesting she's maybe mentally unstable.
Yeah, this is where that narrative control comes in. You know, Dubai has put a ton of money into building its image as this modern cosmopolitan hub.
Right.
And if people believe Latifa, it could really damage that image.
Yeah, it's not just family drama.
Right.
It's about international reputation, economic interests, political power. A story like this involving these allegations of human rights violations within a ruling family could have a huge impact on a country's standing in the world.
Absolutely. And so their official response has been this carefully planned mix of denials,
Right.
attempts to control what people think, and efforts to downplay how serious all of this is.
Yeah.
It's like a classic strategy used by people in power to protect what they have and keep things under control.
But the evidence, especially the UK court's findings, and the leaked data from the Pegasus project paints a very different picture.
Right.
It suggests a real effort to monitor Latifa, maybe even during her escape, and to silence her once she was back in Dubai.
And then there's the international response, which has been pretty muted. I mean, the UN expressed concern, and they called for an independent investigation, but nothing concrete's really happened.
Yeah, the UK said they're monitoring the situation, but how much they're actually involved is still a mystery.
Yeah. This is a tricky situation for international actors.
Right.
On one hand, you have these concerns about human rights violations.
Right.
On the other hand, you have diplomatic and economic ties.
Yeah.
Especially with a powerful country like the UAE.
Right. It's that age-old question. How do we balance respecting a nation's sovereignty with upholding universal human rights?
Exactly.
There's no easy answer, and the Princess Latifa case just brings that dilemma into sharp focus.
For sure.
It makes you wonder, what are the limits of international pressure?
Yeah.
Can diplomacy really keep someone safe
Right.
when a powerful state is determined to control the story?
That's a really good question.
So are you saying it's not a black and white situation?
It's not.
There are a lot of gray areas that make it hard to know the truth and decide what to do.
Exactly. And that's why we've given you all the pieces of the puzzle, the timeline, the different narratives, the evidence from the Pegasus project,
Right.
and the UK court rulings. Now it's up to you to put those pieces together and decide what you believe.
We're not here to tell you what to think, but to give you the tools to think critically.
Absolutely.
Weigh the evidence and form your own conclusions.
Remember, this is a case where powerful people are trying to control the story. So there might not be one single answer.
Right.
But questioning everything and looking at the evidence can help you understand this complicated situation and come to your own conclusions.
Okay, so we've looked at the different sides of the story and how hard it is to know what's really true.
Yeah.
But I want to shift gears a little and think about the bigger picture. What does this case, with all its crazy twists and turns, tell us about the world?
It's fascinating how the Princess Latifa story really highlights several big issues that go way beyond Dubai.
Like what?
Well, first, it shows us how important human rights still are.
Yeah.
Even with all the technology and communication we have today, people's freedoms can be taken away.
Right.
And those in power can manipulate the story to protect themselves.
It makes you wonder, have things really changed? Are we making progress on human rights, or are we just seeing new ways to control and silence people?
That's a big question, and one we need to answer as a global community.
Yeah.
The Princess Latifa case shows us how limited international pressure is and how hard it is to step in when a government wants to control everything, even if it means taking away someone's freedom.
It also raises concerns about all this surveillance technology.
Absolutely.
Pegasus Project revelations are scary.
Right.
They remind us that our privacy is at risk,
Yeah.
not just for people like Princess Latifa, but for everyone. If a government can use spyware to watch its own people, what does that say about our right to speak our minds and have privacy in the digital age?
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
We need to be more transparent and accountable about how these technologies are made and used.
Right. We can't just accept new technology without thinking about how it might affect our freedoms and rights.
The Princess Latifa case is a powerful reminder that the fight for human rights, freedom of expression, and privacy is far from over. We can't be complacent. We need to be active, question those in power, and make sure these fundamental rights are protected for everyone.
Well said. Okay, so we've unpacked this complex case, looking at the escapes, the conflicting stories, the evidence, and the international response.
Yeah.
We even talked about the bigger issues of human rights and surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
But before we wrap things up, I want to pause for a moment and let you, our listener, think about what's resonated most with you so far.
What questions are you left with?
Because it's in those unanswered questions, in that space between knowing and not knowing, that we can really think critically and understand things at a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
So we've explored the facts, we've analyzed the different sides of the story and considered the implications, but the big question is, what happens next for Princess Latifa?
That's the question everyone's asking, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
Even with those public appearances, the Free Latifa campaign disbanding, and the UN saying she's well, there's still so many unknowns, like how much freedom she actually has if she can talk to people on her own.
And how she's really doing, it's all a big mystery.
It's like we're getting these carefully chosen glimpses, but we're not seeing the whole picture.
And knowing how Dubai and the UAE control information.
Right.
We have to be careful about any news or pictures we see about Latifa.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to think about who's sharing it, why they're sharing it, and the chance that things might not be what they seem.
Remember Latifa herself said in those secret videos that she was being forced to act a certain way when people visited?
It's scary to think that those public appearances, which were meant to reassure everyone, could actually be proof that she's still captive.
It really shows how complicated this case is.
Yeah.
And how hard it is to know what's true and what's just a made-up story.
So despite the official word that she's fine, a lot of people around the world are still worried about her and don't believe Dubai.
Rightfully so.
Until we know for sure that Latifa is free and doing okay. Until she can talk to the world openly.
Those worries will and should stay.
So what can we do? Is there any way Latifa can get her freedom back and live the life she wants?
Yeah, is there any hope?
It's a tough situation with powerful people involved. There's no easy answer.
Right.
Anything we do will need a careful mix of diplomacy, pressure, and following international law.
I know it sounds crazy, but like, can't we just go get her?
I know it sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
But realistically, we need to keep the pressure on internationally.
Yeah.
Independent investigations by groups like the UN could help us find out the truth and hold people accountable. And we have to keep talking about Latifa's case. Keep her story in the news. The more people know about what's happening, the harder it'll be for those empowered to ignore it.
So even though we might feel helpless on our own, you're saying that what we do and what we know can make a difference.
Absolutely. Think of it like a ripple effect.
Right.
Every conversation, every article, shared every letter written to a government official, it all adds up to put pressure on those in power. And over time, it can break down the walls of silence.
Yeah.
It might not be a quick solution, but it's a long-term effort that can lead to real change.
That's good to hear. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by these big issues.
I know.
But you're right, when we all come together, our actions can be really powerful.
And don't forget how important it is to just talk about these things by discussing them with friends, family, colleagues.
Yeah.
We're raising awareness, challenging what people think, and keeping the conversation going. That's how we change minds, influence public opinion, and hopefully create a world where stories like Latifa's don't happen as often.
You mentioned independent investigations earlier.
Yeah.
Are there any specific groups that would be best for this case?
The UN Human Rights Council makes sense.
Okay.
They have the authority and expertise to look into human rights abuses,
Yeah.
even in complicated and sensitive political situations.
Mm.
Also, organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch are really good at investigating these types of situations. Their
Right.
involvement could bring much-needed attention to Latifa's case.
That's a great point. We'll include links to those organizations in our show notes so listeners can learn more and see how they can help.
It's also important to remember that while Latifa's case is unique,
Yeah.
it also reflects what's happening in the world more broadly.
Right.
Surveillance technology being used to silence people and the difficulty of holding powerful people accountable, these are issues that go way beyond Dubai.
It makes you think that even now in the 21st century, individual freedom is fragile and needs to be protected.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and assume everything's okay.
Right.
We have to stay informed to be part of these conversations and never take our own freedoms for granted.
Mm-hmm.
The fight for human rights is ongoing, and we all have a part to play in making sure everyone can live with dignity and freedom no matter who they are or where they come from.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. We started with Princess Latifa's escape attempts
Yeah.
and ended up talking about some of the biggest issues of our time.
It has been a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
And I hope it's inspired you, our listener, to learn more about these issues, to question what you're told, and to think about what you can do, even small things, to make the world a fairer place.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we know, the better we can make a difference. And to Princess Latifa, wherever you are, we haven't forgotten you. Your story keeps inspiring us to fight for freedom, justice, and the right of everyone to live without fear and oppression.